Awesome. All right, we're live. We're gonna start right now. Welcome everyone, and good morning and good evening to those who just joined. I'll just do a really quick introduction, then we'll get straight into the event. Yeah. So good morning. My name
Excellent.
is Siu Hong. I'm the founder of Digital Blacksmith School. Who we are is that we are online learning platform. Started this mainly because we realized that there's a big gap between artists and the industry standard. So the whole school is started to help bridge the gap for the fresh graduate and artists who want to join the industry. So this is how we all started. So we have like a Discord channel. We have a lot of like sharings and free talks like the one you're currently attending now. We also have like courses ongoing right now, like environment course and also a prop design course by K Tang. Welcome to our talk for today. So without any further ado, I'll pass my time to Xander, and Xander will talk about character design in the age of AI. So yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much for that, Hong. Yeah, appreciate that. And yeah, thank you all for joining. I seriously appreciate it, all the support, all the controversy. This is obviously a very tough topic and one that I think artists need to be talking openly about and figuring out how we can continue to create a community in various industries where the artists come first and artists are at the forefront of design. So, yeah, I want to get straight into it. We're definitely going to talk a lot about the ethics of AI and my kind of thoughts there. So, for everyone who has questions related to that, we're putting them in chat. Once we go through that section, I'll definitely open the floor to everyone here so that we can have more of a roundtable and spend as much time on that subject as we need to. So yeah, that'll be the first part. Then we'll go through more of technical demo, how I'm kind of viewing these tools, how I'm currently using them, what I'm developing, and trends that I think everyone should be on the lookout for in the future. We'll go through the demo and then we'll open it up again at the end for another round of questions. And as always, you guys can send me DMs anytime. I'm a completely open book to the artist industry, the artist community. It's done a lot for me in my career. Basically every artist I've ever met has been absolutely incredible sharing their knowledge with me. So I absolutely want to pay it forward, especially in such a crazy time to be an artist like the one we're in currently. So yeah, just a bit about me. I've been working in the Hollywood, Los Angeles film and television industry for about the last decade. I went to school out there. I studied visual effects at Nilman and 2D concept art at the Concept Design Academy. Um, yeah, my career has definitely taught me that I always need to be on the forefront of new technology and always kind of absorbing that and bringing that into my workflows and making sure that that is keeping me relevant and competitive as an artist. Because let's be real, this is the coolest industry that anyone could possibly be a part of. And so everyone wants to do it. And so you have to be competitive. You have to be definitely at the edge of it. So excuse me, I hope my voice lasts for the presentation. Um, yeah, I I spent the last 10 years, like I said, in the Hollywood film industry. I implement as much 3D as possible into my work because 3D is ultra useful, ultra competitive, and can get you basically anywhere in the industry that you want to be. And that kind of led me to learning about AI pretty early on. So before Midjourney, before Stable Diffusion, I actually helped founded a startup that was working on character animations. It was called Eliza Technologies, a startup in Los Angeles. And we worked with a lot of developers where what we were doing was combining 3D characters with deepfake animations or a code base similar to deepfake. And it kind of gave me the first look at the implications of artificial intelligence and what it was going to mean for artists, designers, for pre-production, production, and post-production. And I realized it was going to change everything because it is incredibly powerful. So after that, that really took me down a road where I wanted to make sure that I was constantly at the forefront of it, sharing as much information as I could with artists. And yeah, at first artists didn't pay too much attention to it, but as soon as it got really good, that's when every artist had to be awakened to it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I am currently the creative director of a digital apparel company. We're also doing a lot of development in artificial intelligence for the apparel industry. But we're always utilizing traditional techniques, 3D techniques, and hopefully through the presentation today, I can kind of share with you all how all of this is going to be merged into one role, and why I'm very sure that traditional artistry techniques, 3D artistry, none of that is going anywhere. All it's going to be combined into, a wide variety of different roles that gets artists to kind of bring all of these different skill sets and software together. So one of the questions that we were posed early on was, do I think it's still worth it to be an artist in this age? And I most definitely do. I think this is actually an incredible time to be an artist if you have the fortitude and the passion to go through with it. So with all that being said, let's get a bit into the demo. So I shared this on my Instagram, but just so you guys all know kind of where I'm headed with everything. These are the goals for the talk and for the ongoing conversation that I want to continue having with everyone and continue having with Digital Blacksmith. So the main goal, obviously, is to empower artists. Artists are unbelievably important for society, unbelievably important for the entertainment industries, and it's going to be us that are going to be at the forefront of design. It's not going to be prompt engineers, it's not going to be developers, it is going to be us. And a lot of us are going to be using various approaches and various tools in artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, it's going to be our skills, our decision making, and our creative eyes that are pushing the entertainment industry forward. So empowering artists is the number one. I want to share what I think are high impact ideas and workflows to increase the value proposition and the capabilities of all of us artists. Like I said, I want to keep artists at the forefront of design. I want to use AI for enhancement, not replacement. I think that's really important. Definitely what we're all focused on is how we can enhance ourselves, whether that means using AI or not, and not to be replaced by just some, random prompt engineer. Which means giving artists an understanding of AI so that they can, I'm gonna have to move this during the call, so they can choose what tools to use and how to differentiate themselves from AI. Please excuse me, I'm sorry for the coughing, everyone. All right, so our evolving entertainment industry. Obviously, AI tools are rapidly becoming integrated into every part of the production pipeline. I know that we all feel this for sure. So it's important for commercial artists to understand this technology and use it ethically to enhance their creative pipelines, to stay competitive and marketable in our fast changing entertainment industries. And I also should have put here whether they use it or whether they don't use it, because I still think that there will be tremendous valuation on projects and companies that don't utilize any AI at all. In a very similar way that there's still a traditional art market that has higher valuation today than ever before. So I think that's very similar. So I believe that the most effective way to approach this is to combine modern technologies with traditional artistic skills like drawing, painting, and sculpting while developing a trained eye. I don't think that these traditional skills are going anywhere, because I think at the end of the day, it's going to require someone with a trained eye to be able to make the final creative decisions. And I think especially for artists, one of the very best ways to train your eye is to continue to work on traditional skills like drawing, painting, sculpting. So when combined with traditional skills, AI will give an individual the capability to expand their creative capacity exponentially. These hybrid workflows will allow artists to continue to refine their focus towards high-level creative decision-making and automate repetitive processes like cleanup, iteration, retouching, hopefully rigging soon. This is going to give power to small teams and individuals to create AAA projects while being able to overcome common obstacles like budget, time, and lack of knowledge. So for all of you, imagine you have the capability to make your own passion project a reality today by yourself. Imagine you don't have to hire, a multi-million-dollar studio or get approval from producers or Hollywood or whatever it is to create the project you want. This is all going to be extremely possible by your own hands in the very near future, if not already. We'll just touch on this super quick because I'm sure everyone is pretty familiar. Yeah, generative AI, it's a branch of artificial intelligence. It creates new content like images, text, music, or 3D models by learning patterns from existing data. Obviously, we're going to be focused on image generation. AI has been evolving since the 50s, from neural networks to generative adversarial networks, or GANs. That's actually what I started using back in 2019, was generative adversarial networks, transformer models, and then today our current process that we use is diffusion models, which is what you're seeing on the screen. And what I'm going to be showcasing today is an open source diffusion model called Stable Diffusion. The other big one that I'm sure you are all probably aware of is Midjourney. And I'll talk a bit about why I definitely think artists should use open source like Stable Diffusion as opposed to Midjourney, which is big tech. So the conclusion was always that we would create models that could predict human-like output based on our patterns. There's technically a finite amount of visual ideas and high predictability to what and how humans will react to certain imagery. So this was inevitable. We were always going to create basically a computational approach to image generation. We were always headed here, and it could have gone a lot worse, which we'll touch on a little bit. So diffusion models generate high resolution images by adding Gaussian noise to original data and learning to remove the noise. Diffusion models learn from this and creates new original data. So these models are not taking images and storing them in some sort of data set or anything like that. What they're doing instead is they're taking an image, learning from that image based on a variety of parameters that engineers are giving it, and then discarding that images while understanding what it needs to do to reconstruct the image based on those parameters. So this is the big one. I said this at the beginning, but this is where we're going to focus quite a bit on, and definitely where I want to take as many questions as possible so that we can really have a good discussion of the philosophy and specifically the ethics of AI. This is extremely important for our industry. It's very, very important for every individual artist. So most definitely something that I want to make sure everyone is heard on, and we will definitely spend some time to go through questions here. Yeah, and really talk this one through. So the big one, I think, is the intellectual property theft. So it's true that there was a point where large companies scraped the internet for images to train their models without the consent of the original creators of the images. And I do regard this as unethical, though I do not think it's going to be ruled as illegal. I regard this as unjust, and I advocate for artist compensation, of course, and the creation of ethical models. However, I also recognize that I, and all of us, have contributed to humanity by expanding its creative capabilities, by willingly adding our content to the internet for anyone to use and learn from, right? Long before AI, we were all uploading artwork online, and knowing full well that anyone could hop on, any company could hop on, right click and save an image, use that image in their storyboards, use that image in their reference, their inspiration, their marketing, whatever that is. And yes, of course, there's a downside to that. But there's also an incredible upside to that. I've come across a variety of businesses who have hired me who have said, hey, at one point in time, we put some of your artwork in a pitch deck, and that helped us, achieve our business goals. And you could argue that, it's disappointing that I didn't have consent for something like that. But I tend to focus more on it's excellent that my contribution helped other individuals and entities achieve their goals. So definitely a kind of question of where our misuse and abuse, but I also think many positive outcomes. Like I said, I prefer to focus on the latter, as this is what will push me to be a better artist and designer and achieve my business goals and creative goals. And obviously, I hope that for everyone here in the call today and the wider artist community. So what that means to me is to focus on, like I said at the beginning, enhancement rather than replacement. Enhancing the value proposition that artists can bring to their employers, to their clients, rather than resigning themselves to being replaced by some prompt master, some producer who thinks they're a designer. Focus on the ability to focus on high-level creative decisions. So like we said at the beginning, automating a lot of repetitive tasks or things that don't exactly matter when we're thinking about the big picture of a project. Democratizing of creativity. So people in less privileged circumstances can use this technology to build businesses and have access to top-level content creation. I have a lot of incredible stories where this is involved. Just to give you guys kind of one that hits close to home for me, a good friend of mine is in Bangladesh, and he does not have a lot of access to funding, to infrastructure, to software, things like that, to be able to get his business up off the ground. And obviously that means that he does not have access to top level visuals, or being able to hire an artist like me to design the kinds of artwork and promo material, pitch material, social posts, things like that for his business. But what we were able to do was set him up with Stable Diffusion, train data sets based on my artwork, um, and allow him now to fill a role that otherwise couldn't have existed. It's not like he could have hired an artist, right? But still be able to produce close to top level content that brought his business forward. And I'm very happy to say that he's been able to really, bring his family, his house, his living circumstance up to a really great level through this. So that's just one story that I have, but I have a ton of positive stories where it's related to this. So I think it's important also for artists to kind of look outside our own community and see how excuse me, how our contributions to these data sets um, have contributed to other people across the globe. Focus on the creation of new roles, jobs, and opportunities. We're definitely going to talk about that, how I see roles expanding, how I see new types of jobs being created, and obviously new opportunities for us all. And then achieving projects that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So we definitely want to talk about how artists can use AI ethically, or as ethically as possible, because like I said, there was a point in time, and it's still ongoing, that big companies did scrape the internet and take our work without compensation and without consent. And so this is definitely going to be a spectrum of ethics at play here. And I definitely encourage everyone to kind of reflect on themselves and their own circumstances and how you want to approach using technology like this. So the first one and the big one, I'm definitely an advocate for leveraging open source models like Stable Diffusion and like a lot of the other tools we're going to talk about today. So open source meaning anyone in the globe can go and download them and access them and use them. They're not behind a paywall. They're not behind any particular company. They're open for humanity. So this does two things. One, by not paying for private companies to train on our data, we're not incentivizing them to train on our data without consent. So incentivizing open source projects that everyone in any part of the world has access to, and the ability to control training data and train on our own. So these three things can help kind of build the future that we ultimately want to do. We want to encourage big businesses, if they're taking this artwork, to compensate us for it. And that should most definitely be a practice that's put into place going into the future. And so if the industries really are leaving big tech and not paying for that, it incentivizes big tech to at least be more just with the situation and compensate artists in a way that they have not in the past. And then obviously we want to encourage developers to create open source projects so that everyone does have access to it, as opposed to it being behind a paywall. I think is much superior. So the next one is combining artificial intelligence with traditional techniques. I'm not sure if we started recording yet, but I touched on at the beginning of this that I don't think traditional techniques are going anywhere. In fact, I think it's maybe more important than ever before for real artists, real designers to continue to focus on their traditional skill sets, because that is what is going to train your eye and allow you, if you want, to use artificial intelligence in a way that is artistic and not just random output. So it ensures that a human is guiding the creative output, has say over every stage of creation, and has the final say in how the art will interact with the audience. It's also really, really key to ethical use, is you want to have control over how that output is being used, how it's affecting people. Traditional techniques refine the most important thing a creative can have, their eye. Without a refined eye, a creative's taste will be diminished, and with diminished taste, even with the best AI models, will not be able to create output that truly connects with audiences. Prove me wrong on this. AI in the hands of a visionary will always succeed over raw output. The next big thing, this is extremely relevant to our talk and for everyone here, is to speak openly about your artistic process when negotiating with clients, your employer, with other artists. Do not let this devalue your work. This is huge. We all have to stand together in making sure that just because artificial intelligence is out there, just because other people can use it, and just because you might use it, it does not cheapen your work. In fact, it should do the opposite. Just because AI is being used to enhance your output does not mean that it is worth less. In fact, because you have added new skills to your pipeline, you are worth more. And we all need to stand extremely firm on this and be able to showcase why this is making what you're offering a client or an employer worth more. Don't let it destroy your timeline either. Just because you can work faster or create more iterations does not mean that your contracts should be shortened. Try to expand them instead of shortening them. For example, iterating faster creates more time for high level decision making and problem solving. So, again, I'm sure, like all of you, some of the very best decisions you make in a piece of artwork might just be a couple paint strokes, but you might have, been staring at your artwork, pacing back and forth, thinking about those paint strokes for a good hour before that. And so that's the kind of quality time that we want to be able to build into a pipeline, not lose time and lose the ability to make those decisions. So I definitely want to flip people's paradigm on this because a lot of my colleagues have expressed concern over employers just wanting to cut contracts shorter. And I think that what we need to do is stand firm and explain to them why it doesn't make sense to make contracts shorter. What makes sense is for those contracts to be elevated. So I want to leave you on the ethics part of it with a thought experiment. This is something I think about frequently, but yeah. So imagine a different world, one where AI companies don't scrape the internet for our art without commission or without permission. Instead, they build their own closed, secret data sets, and the law bans open source models. Generative AI becomes a fortress, locked behind corporate walls, accessible only to those who can pay. In this world, there is no democratization of creativity, no chance for artists to train their own models, no space for individual creators to compete with the output of giant tech companies. In this world, our creative freedom is stifled, the playing field is gone. Personally, I believe this world is far worse off for artists, for audiences, than the world we're currently in. Despite the injustice that happened, we all have an equal playing field within the realm of open source tools. I'd rather this world where the tools for creativity are only for the few, or are not only for the few who can afford them. So again, just a bit of a paradigm shift that I'm thinking about is that big tech companies were always going to get to this point. If we had banned their scraping of the internet, maybe it takes them another year, maybe 6 more months, but we would not have all of the open source development that everyone around the globe can use. Only the big tech companies and those willing and able to pay for it would be able to use this. So all things considered, it could be a lot worse. So with that, for our demo today, I want to focus on shaping the future of creativity, breathing life into your passion projects, expanding your roles and job opportunities, and embracing a future that moves fast and promises the unexpected because it certainly will. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on the ethics, at least a brief overview, because I've been thinking about this problem for quite some time. So like we said at the beginning, I know probably a majority of the questions everyone has do relate specifically to the ethics of the situation. So I want to take some time now to open the floor to any questions. Let's do that before we move on to the demo, because I want to make sure that that is definitely addressed. And what I'm going to do here, maybe we can kind of go back and forth between if anyone wants to hop on a microphone. I'll start with some questions from chat. Okay, so questions related to AI. Hong, can you give me a thumbs up? Can everyone see the questions on my screen as well? It looks like it, right? Excellent, excellent. Okay. I'll read the first question, and then if anyone wants to, pop on their microphone, um, I applaud you for it. All right, so I'm very interested to see how AI can be applied to my work ethically and hopefully help better work-life balance. So the first part, yeah, the ethics. I hope that we kind of touched on that through all of this, but yeah, the recap is definitely like any piece of technology. It really depends on how you use it, right? For myself, when I'm looking to hire an artist, let's say, I'm certainly not going to hire, a prompt master who has a really nice mid-journey portfolio. Absolutely not. Um, that's number one, it's not particularly ethical in my opinion. But number two, it's certainly not going to get the job done to the level that I need it at, because now we're all competing not only with each other, but with artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is pretty damn good at making images. So what we need is enhanced real life artists. So that would be the first one for anyone here who's in a hiring position. That would go a long way to making sure that you're working ethically, is to continue to put artists first, including yourself. And then to the better work-life balance. This is maybe a bit of a bigger topic here, or maybe more of a long-term thought that I've had. But I know there's a lot of fear on automation replacing jobs, and I think that that fear is definitely warranted. I know especially artists are definitely feeling this squeeze right now. I know a lot of artists who are out of work. But I think on a more macro level, work-life balance is actually going to be fairly accessible, because a lot of the um, a lot of the repetitive tasks can be automated. Um, so, like for myself, running a business, working a team of developers, being the creative director of a company, I'm doing things like automating copywriting. I'm automating accounting. Obviously, I can do a lot of things that can automate forms of development or writing code, because I'm not a coder in the slightest. So all of this kind of helps me focus on the art. So I think that there's most definitely ways that maybe you're not necessarily using artificial intelligence in your artwork, but you're using it in other areas of your life that can free up more time so that you can be focused on the executive creative decisions that you want to make. So yeah, hopefully I touched on that there. Um, would anyone like to go live, ask any questions, roast me, anything like that? Should I keep going?
I have a question as far as when we start using AI in our work and we start advertising to like employers that
Freddie, I'm so sorry. You're coming in extremely quiet. Is there anything you could do to boost your microphone, or maybe talk more directly into the mic?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
I'm just literally on the mic. Okay. My question goes: when we start integrating AI into our work as an enhancement, do you have any recommendations on how to advertise that to employers in a tasteful way, considering how divisive it is? As far as like, yeah,
I'm s-
or is there, do you recommend any best way to kind of like say that
I'm so sorry. Could you say the second part again for me? Maybe shout it.
how do you recommend that telling potential employers that we use AI in our work? Just considering how divisive it is, do you recommend we don't really advertise that at all, or is there a certain way that you think we should go ahead and disclose that?
Yeah, definitely. So for anyone who was having a bit of trouble hearing, sorry about that, Freddie. That might just be on my end. But the question, if I understood you, was how should we go about talking about the integration of artificial intelligence in our portfolios to potential employers? Um, yeah, I mean, this is going to be on a very individual basis, right? Personally, how I have approached it for the last couple of years is I'm very open with the process that I'm going to use when it's warranted, right? I have a lot of clients where they don't particularly care what the process is. They just want, really good output. And so that doesn't necessarily come into play. But more often than not, how I like to go about those conversations is being open about it, and first and foremost saying, listen, I don't need to use AI on this job. Um, I usually touch base on just the ethics of it because, some companies are more artist first, some companies are more corporate, some companies, it just doesn't really have to do with it being artwork, right? It's just more commercial. Um, and so I would say mostly for the more artistic companies or artist first companies, you want to be upfront about it that, listen, I have these skill sets. I know how to use them. I have a portfolio that reflects that. And most importantly, within that portfolio, I can also showcase all of the requisite skills for that job that I can do without the use of AI. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to get on a job and you're going to immediately find a variety of situations where artificial intelligence cannot do the specific thing that you need to do in a timely manner. Remember that artificial intelligence is a black box of decision making. It's very, very difficult to control the output. And that's why it's going to be very, very important for a real artist to be in control of that output. And so, if you're working, I'm so sorry, Freddie. I don't know your background exactly, but hopefully this relates. Let's say it's a concept art job, a character design job. Um, you definitely don't want to have a portfolio that's only artificial intelligence. You definitely want to make sure that you have many pieces in that portfolio that showcases that you can sketch, you can iterate, you can quickly make changes within that, within the design in a timely manner, things like that. So you want to make sure that you can showcase the entire range. I certainly, would not be in a position to hire on AI for everything. So yeah, I definitely advocate being open and giving your employer the option of what tools they want to use. And then you didn't ask this, but I think this is important. Don't be bullied by an employer either. An employer says you have to use this, give them options. Say, listen, I don't feel comfortable using this for A, B, and C ethical reasons. Put that in a very blunt but coherent, quick manner. But then tell them that you have the skills where you don't need it. You can always offer them an alternative. So yeah, hopefully that helps. That's how I would go about that. Appreciate the question. Um, Hit the thumbs up or the hand if someone else wants to jump in. But we'll go to number 2. Just interested in the thoughts on what constitutes ethical AI. Yeah, I mean, this is tough, right? Because a lot of it comes down to what your personal morals are. I know we're using the term ethical, but a lot of this is morality based as well. There's an argument to be made that I'm very sympathetic to, that there is no such thing as ethical AI because at the very base of all of the models, there is a data set that contains the scraped internet. And if that's the case, then I'm most definitely amenable to the argument that there is no such thing as ethical AI. That could be the case, and I certainly don't fault anyone for thinking that way. Um, that being said, I hope that in the section we just went over in the presentation, I kind of touched base on what I think constitutes at least more ethical AI, right? I think it's less ethical to, pay Midjourney and spit out random images and take a job from an artist, having a portfolio done that way. I think it's much more ethical to build a portfolio yourself, train that portfolio into a model so that that model knows you, right? So that you're not prompting some other artist's name, stealing their style. You want to prompt it with your own name, trained on your own artwork, using open source models so that you're not incentivizing big tech to continue the theft. So yeah, I hope that these are ways that we can move forward more ethically. And ultimately, this doesn't we're just not there technically yet, but ultimately what I do want to happen and what I'm continuing to work for in my own personal model that I'm training is ultimately I want to create enough artwork with enough range where I do have a data set solely trained on my own work. And what you could do to substitute the kind of base model that needs to exist in an artist model is you can train it on open source images, right? So there's tons of different resources with millions of models with, or sorry, models with millions of parameters that are built on open source imagery, right? There's royalty-free images, tens of millions of them. And those models do exist online right now, and we all have access to them on GitHub absolutely for free. So there's definitely an argument to be said that you could use a base model that's completely from royalty-free images and then train your own portfolio into that. And yeah, I think that is definitely a route forward that becomes more and more possible as the days go by. That I think you could make the argument is actually completely ethical. So yeah, I love this question. Definitely something to be on the lookout for. Did I see a hands up? Give you guys a second. Just want to make sure. You guys can also post any questions in this chat too if you don't want to talk. I totally understand. Okay, how can young artists use these AI tools without them becoming crutches that might hinder them in the future if it starts to replace the fundamentals? I read this one before we started recording, but I absolutely love this question. This is exactly what young artists and students should be thinking about right now. This is huge. This is ultra important. What's going to happen is that for all of the senior artists here, for all the working professionals, I'm sure all of you already know this and can sense this, but you already know when a piece is AI. And we've seen so much of it now that it kind of has a feeling about it. You know, it's kind of a fast food of art. Like, it looks really good when you first see it, right? Because it's trained on patterns of human recognition. So it knows how to get an image that's captivating to the human eye. But after about 2 seconds of looking at it, it completely falls apart. You know, it's gooey, it doesn't have the right anatomy, it has lots of artifacting, it doesn't make sense, things like that. And so if you're an artist who uses this as a crutch, and don't get me wrong, I definitely use it as a crutch. Like, it's just part of it, right? If you're in a production setting, it's, you know, very similar to like having to use a photo bashing as a crutch. Very similar, and that sucks too. But this could be a crutch tenfold if you let it be. So the very best way to combat this is to make sure you have those skills without AI. If you're a student, I highly recommend not ever touching the damn thing. Focus on your figure drawing, your life drawing, your painting, your sculpting. Trust me. If you focus on all that for, you know, the year, 2 years, 3 years as a young artist, and of course, you know, through the rest of your lifetime, right? Um, then when you do integrate AI just into the parts of the pipeline that matter, it's really going to empower your pipeline versus if you do it the opposite way, all that's going to happen is you're going to have AI output that guides all your decisions. You're not making any artistic decisions yourself. You're going to feel hollow. You're going to feel soulless as an artist. And then when you do try to add your own touch into it, all you're going to do is degrade the image. And that's not artistically fulfilling. You're going to be a fraud. You're not going to get hired. You know, any of the professional working artists who are in positions to hire are going to spot that in a portfolio immediately. So I don't think that's going anywhere. Yeah, how can young artists use AI tools without them becoming crutches? Don't use the crutches. Learn to walk on your own. Yeah, it will never replace the fundamentals. Even if you find yourself in a position like me where you're very rarely drawing by hand nowadays, I still need that fundamental understanding for my eye, for my thought process, for my creative development. I'm very, very glad that I went through school learning to dissect an image, learning everything by hand. Because if I didn't have all of those hours of just staring at the human figure as I was drawing it and learning the anatomy, I never would have honed my eye to be able to come up with the ideas that I have today. So it's ultra important. Don't be tempted. The apple's poison. Okay. Any hands up? Should I move to the next one? All right. Is it still worth it to become a concept artist in the age of AI? Yeah, this is huge. I know a lot of artists and industries and guilds are asking this very question right now. Yeah, I completely understand why some people do have kind of a gloomy outlook on this, especially because there is a contraction of our industries currently happening at the moment. It's definitely a deflationary period. But what I said at the beginning and what I have to stand by is that, listen, if in your heart of hearts, in your soul, you're an artist, you're a designer, then you have to go become that, no matter how competitive it is, no matter how many other people are using other tools. You have to become the concept artist that you know that you are. So when it comes to worth, it's really for you to decide, right? Um, Worth might mean money, and probably even long before AI, there's probably very few artists who would say get into it for the money. Although, listen, there's some incredible jobs that are for concept artists that pay extremely well. Definitely starting off as a concept artist has helped me get into roles of art director, lead artist, creative director that have paid very well. So definitely, the answer of worth is something that you got to answer for yourself. But definitely, I would say any sort of pain, any sort of struggle that you're going to go through is going to be worth it if at the end of the day you get to draw, you get to be creative. It's going to be worth it. Money is not going to matter. So there's just no way I can deviate from that answer. Okay, just checking to make sure no one has their hands up. Okay, awesome. We got a few more. Actually, I think we're going to save some of these for the end because we're going to just focus on the ethics right now. Let's just make sure. Yeah, we're going to save this one for the end. Okay, and then this is, I think, more of a process question, but I'm curious, how do you exactly generate what you want, or whether you generate a general idea, then build/expand the idea from that point? Do you struggle with generating through specific keywords and descriptions of the image brainstorm? Yeah, it's a really excellent question. We're going to cover all of that in the kind of demo that I'm going to share next. Okay, last chance, just for now. At the end of the talk, we're definitely going to open it up. If you have questions along the way, we can definitely talk more about AI. Even after this talk, I'm going to be in the Digital Blacksmith School Discord. My DMs on Instagram are always open. All of my colleagues and friends can attest to this. I want to be as generous with my knowledge as possible. So at any point in time, you can hit me up with any question. And I know all of the community of Digital Blacksmith feels the same. So yeah, if you have any questions later on, please ask. So extremely important topic for artists. Okay, let's get into it then. Character design or in our case, a character designer, is going to see contraction and expansion. So it's single image character design concept art. It's very similar to this middle image here, where you're hired to make a character, and more often than not, that culminates in one final image, maybe a series of sketches before it, but one final image that is then used by all the different departments in production to fulfill all of their roles. However, this will also be continuous expansion in the amount of worldwide entertainment projects, as more and more people have the ability to spend more of their time and resources engaging with entertainment media. So world market demand for quality content will continue to grow. So the role and the job itself is going through contraction, let's say, but the amount of opportunities that start to go outside that role worldwide are definitely expanding. More studios open every day, more individuals and small teams have budgets that they can work with. more projects, more jobs constantly are opening up. So I most definitely think that it will be like the stock market, right? We're going to have highs and lows. There will be booms and busts. There will be new industries popping up, old industries dying. It's going to be turbulent for sure, right? That's kind of the characterization of the 21st century. Um, so yeah, it's multifaceted, but I think that for more periods of time than not, I definitely think that we will be able to reach equilibriums. So we touched on this a sec, but let's add this to the expansion of the role of a character designer itself. So just for kind of a frame of reference, let's just say 10 years ago, one artist could deliver a handful of pencil sketches in a day. Okay, maybe more, but just as a kind of general thought. Quickly, over the last couple of decades, that turned into full color, photoreal digital illustrations in that same amount of time, much higher fidelity. And today, that now often means refined conceptual 3D models, something more like this, all in that same time period. So the role itself is expanding and requiring more types of skill sets, more types of specialization, more types of knowledge. And if you notice too, not only is that expanding the role itself, but that now is like being compartmentalized into multiple roles. So again, expansion and contraction. Yeah, and then of course the question is, what does this mean for the artists of tomorrow? So we're going to focus on three key areas that I think are most relevant to the specific role we're talking about, but I think are really important for all types of artists to kind of be on the lookout for. So these are all pieces that I've developed in the past year, I believe. Some personal, some with the digital apparel company that I'm creative directing for called Apparel Intelligence. So the first is obviously going to be sketching and designing, the pre-production phase, and how we're going to take all of our traditional skill sets and use AI to enhance them, or to completely cut AI out and make sure that you can stand out as an artist without it. Conceptual animation. So this kind of currently exists in the form of visual development artists, but I think very similar to how we just talked about 3D. We're going to see more of this at the pre-production and concept art stages. This I'm very, very interested in. I think this is incredible to bring your concept art to life. And then obviously using it with 3D creation, not only to aid the creation of the 3D assets, but also using the 3D assets to further control the output of the AI to make sure that your output has the artistic integrity that it needs for the job. So these are the three big areas that we're going to touch on with the demo. So I've been working with Hong on a specific piece so that we can kind of talk through all of the different elements for it. So this is a character we kind of been working on for the past month. So we're going to start this as we would traditionally for a job, right? We're going to start with a script, and this is going to ground everything and make sure that our vision is guiding the process and specifically the artificial intelligence, because never at any point in time do we want the artificial intelligence to pull us around. It's one thing to be at a period of the production where you want to be brainstorming and you have a nice base to build off of and to start generating ideas and use it in that way. But I don't think that maybe not ever, but I think very rarely you want to be at a point in production where you don't have the fundamentals guiding. So for us, that's going to mean starting with a script. And even if I'm not given a script by my director or my costume designer or my producer, I usually just write a little something for myself just to kind of give myself some details, some attitude, some mood. So in this case, what we started with, just to give it a bit of poeticism. Her oceanic blue skin shimmered under the flicker of white lights, both striking and strangely serene. She moved with an effortless grace, clad in a fusion of futuristic streetwear and flex plasti armor, a high-collared wasp yellow jacket woven with sleek, tech-infused fabric over snug, form-fitting pants that traced every line of her athletic form as she gracefully, brutally stepped forward. Plates of polished, old-world steel rest on her shoulders and forearms, a curious mix of past and future, practicality and elegance. Her eyes, dark and alert, revealed a quiet strength, softened by a hint of her confidence in the future. There's a toughness in her stance, yet a softness in her gaze. a woman full of contradictions, both fierce and feminine, navigating a world not yet fully formed. So just again, to ground myself, to give myself direction to head into. It's going to be super important on jobs, especially if you're like in film, television, games, because you'll be given descriptions and scripts, and you want to make sure that you're not deviating from that, and especially not being yanked in some direction because you don't know how to control artificial intelligence because you have no fundamentals yourself. Okay, so let's get into the process. So this is very similar to how I might start sketching on the page, but what you're going to see is instead of starting with a sketch, what I'm going to start with is a free demo of a piece of software called Rebelium. Highly recommend. They're in their beta right now. Anyone can download it for free. I believe they're going to keep a free version of their software as well open, very similar to what Unreal Engine does with MetaHuman. And so this is just a really excellent way where I can just immediately get kind of a base or the basics of a design onto the paper. So it gives me the gender, the outfit, the skin tone, the body type, the hairstyle, just something to work off of. But this is no different than me starting with a pencil sketch, starting with a silhouette sketch, maybe starting with some photo bashing. There's just one approach to do it, and you're going to see why I'm kind of picking this route as we get more into the process. But yeah, this is a really excellent way just to get some strokes on the paper, so to speak. Let me also, I have GIFs in the presentation, but unfortunately Google Slides kind of lowers the quality. So I'm going to pop into some videos as well, just so you can see. So this is Rebelium in action. I can change the skin, the makeup, the groom, sculpt, the wardrobe, all of this on the fly while my art director is over my shoulder. And I can immediately start rotating her in space, getting photo real, or at least close to photo real reflections, lighting interaction, things like that. You're going to see I can give her some walk cycle. It's really great to start visualizing. I can get different angles from this. I can control my camera. So it just gives me, it's just another way to start working at that sketch phase, just to kind of get the generalities of the design down on paper. This kind of goes along with the script, but obviously we got to get our references together. I like to keep it concise and to the point. I'm not a fan of 100 image reference boards. I want to be very deliberate in my designing. So you can kind of see I'm blending kind of techwear with a knight, kind of bringing in elegance and regality with function. Always two juxtapositions I love kind of combining. And then you can see I'm just starting to make the first marks onto a screenshot of that 3D. So I'm painting out kind of the logo, I'm changing the colors, just giving myself that base to start building on top of. Next, we're going to do the same thing with the face. So just to kind of give you a preview of what we want to do ultimately with this project is I want to have the final piece of concept art, a pre-visualization of her making that movement that we described in the script, which is her walking towards the viewer, in that studio setting. And some of this is just for the sake of the demo, obviously, but I want to make sure that I'm kind of laying down the fundamentals, the foundation for how we would approach a design. So reason for that being is that part of the previs animations that I want to be able to showcase as early as pre-production concept art, I want to be facial expressions, because I think it's absolutely intriguing, when I'm designing a face, when I'm designing a brow line or the shapes of the mouth. I always wish I had more time, or the job required me to like also explore, what does that mouth look like when she smiles, when she says something, what's her way of articulating, what do her eyes do, one thing that I most definitely think that all of this technology enables us to spend more time on is going to go just deeper into a design. Very rarely in my career do I get to design a character all the way to the point where I'm actually designing their facial expressions. Fortunately, I've had ample opportunity in my career to kind of condense the role of concept artist with 3D character artists. Which I'm incredibly fortunate to do, and I know that's also a lot of the expansion of the role that we're talking about. And so this is just going to be a way that you can start designing all of these other things that bring a character to life, long before you ever have to truly touch 3D. So just real quick, for the sake of the demo today, you're going to see why, but we are just going to focus on this kind of interior of the face. We're not going to change the hairstyle. We're not going to change the silhouette of the face. You're going to see why, but mainly because ultimately for the facial replacement technology that we're going to use, the face swap AI or deep fakes is probably a term you've heard before. One thing that you want to do to plan ahead is to have your 3D already be in the shape of the character so that the output knows the dimensions that it's going to be face swapping on top of. And so loosely, that just means all of the bony landmarks of the outside of the silhouette of the face. So this is kind of something that, more often than not, right now in my career, I start a lot of designs straight in 3D, in my case, in ZBrush. And I'll kind of go back and forth painting, building in ZBrush, painting, building in ZBrush. And so I'm kind of designing that silhouette at the ZBrush stage. For the purposes of this, we're going to use the silhouette that we got from Reblium, the 3D software that we're using. So a few other considerations, just to get a little bit ahead of myself, is that for the facial replacement that we want to do, or the conceptual animation, a great way to have a good control over it is at the concept phase, that is the 2D image. We want to have control over the skin tone, the eye color, and like we just talked about, the silhouette of the face. So let's get into some open source AI. This is Stable Diffusion. More specifically, this is my Stable Diffusion. What I mean by that is I'm taking the base Stable Diffusion program, and then over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really customized a lot of the different types of tools that I'm using, the controls, and very specifically the model that's being used to generate this imagery. Different models are going to be used for different things, right? One of the major themes of using these tools is that you want to segment parts of the pipeline. So you're never ever, I shouldn't say never because things move very fast in technology, but at this point in time, you're never going to be have an AI where you can type in the full body character and it can just output everything perfectly. More often than not, what you're going to want to do is segment. So we're going to focus on the face, then we'll focus on the costume, focus on the body, then we'll zoom in. I will focus on just her, pauldron or just her jacket, something like that. So we can get more and more focused on the areas that we're going to be designing in. So we're going to start focusing on the face, and let's start bringing all of this together. So like I said, the foundation is the most important. That's always where I'm going to start. I'm just kind of giving myself some quick notes on how I want to take this from more or less this kind of generic 3D feel, and I want to bring realism into it because that's kind of what my portfolio goes to. That's the kind of jobs I enjoy being on, and that's the kind of work that I want to showcase. So shows a very generic 3D feel right now. I'm giving myself some notes. You can kind of see I want to give her those model-esque features. I want to sharpen a lot of these areas. A lot of this is very gooey and kind of loose and kind of just that raw 3D feel. So we want to get that. You can see I've done a little bit of designing like the eye shape better, definitely the brow shapes. I actually liked the lips. I thought the lips were the most successful part of the design. So we left that alone. I think I recolored them. So that's that. And then I'm going to take that, and this is going to be the first line of control for Stable Diffusion. Just to backtrack and triple check that everyone's up to speed with this, everyone here right now can go download Stable Diffusion off of GitHub absolutely for free. This is open to the whole world to use. And the base data set, Stable Diffusion 1.5, comes with it. So everyone has access to this. You don't have to pay anyone. It's run locally, so you don't have to run it online. There's no one stealing your data when you're using it. You can keep all of this on your own computer. It's completely portable, completely open source, extremely artist friendly. So we don't have to get too technical with all of this, but just the kind of 3 areas that I want you guys to be focused on is the ways that we're going to control the kind of output that we want. Because if we just type in a random prompt, I'm sure you all are more than familiar with this at this point. It's like roulette. The output's very random. It's not artistic. It's not an artistic process. It's not fulfilling. It's not going to satisfy your clients. Yeah, there's going to be corporate abuse for sure. That's part of it. There always has been. There's going to be more of it now. But it's not going to get you to where you need and want to be as an artist. So that's just the prompt, right? In this case, I'm using a prompt. We can read it here. The prompt is 8K, portrait photography, Vogue, beauty, portrait of a blue-skinned Asian woman, high fashion model, mixed ethnicity Caucasian, purple hair. Pretty simple prompt. Basically what we're doing here is the first part of it is we're kind of setting the generalities for the model. And by the way, we're using a model called Epic Photogasm, which is a model that's trained on solely photography, specifically portrait photography. This is also an open source model. Anyone can go download this from GitHub. Everyone has access to it. I haven't done any additional retraining of this model. I'm using it as is in this case. So this model is very, very good at human portraits. It's not particularly good at blue human portraits, which is why I need to have that in the input image or the concept art or the snapshot of the Reblium 3D. So I have the prompt and I have the image, and those two things are kind of working together to guide the output. You can see the output here on the right. The next part of the prompt, I'm getting more specific. So the generalities where we want it 8K, we want it high fidelity. It's going to be portrait photography. I threw in Vogue because that immediately kind of sets it to the kind of standard of like magazine covers, and the kind of characterization and beauty that you would see on a magazine cover. And then now we're getting specifically to the subject of the prompt, which in this case is a beauty portrait of a blue-skinned Asian woman, high fashion model. So a lot of kind of keywords in there that are kind of gonna guide the output. So all of the images that the model is trained on are with specific wording that blemishes of the skin, you're going to get more skin wrinkles, things like that. For a beauty portrait, you're automatically going to get more of an airbrushed look, which in this case I thought was desired. Next, I'm going to give it the work with, which is Asian. And I didn't get more specific here. You know, you can definitely get highly like regionally specific, which is a very, very excellent way to use it because, you know, it's trained on a whole world of images, right? It has all types of people in here. But I wanted to kind of give it some room to play with, so I left it fairly general. And then you can also see that I give the word Asian a weight, which is the number after the colon, in this case, 0.6. So with single words in a prompt, you can give those words a weight, which tells Stable Diffusion to put more emphasis on a word or to have that word weigh more heavily on the output. So if Asian had a value of 1, it would be neutral. It would have the same value as every other word in the prompt. However, in this case, I gave it a value of less than 1, meaning I actually wanted it to put less value on the ethnicity of Asian. And the reason for this is because the next part of the prompt, I put in mixed ethnicity Caucasian, which basically means I want one of her parents to be white and I want one of her parents to be Asian, right? Yeah, I just, it's kind of just for myself personally as a character designer, I just think it's absolutely fascinating to get very specific into ethnicities and how different ethnicities blend. You get the most, you know, beautiful, interesting people when that happens, and especially, you know, we live in a really beautiful multicultural society, global society right now, and so I think this is really, really important for designers to have an interest in. So you can see I also weighted Caucasian less than 1. So both Asian and Caucasian have a value less than 1 because I want it to blend the two. So it's just a very cool way that we can start getting some interesting output. So, and then purple hair. We're not going to change the hair, but it's just to kind of basically cement that the input image has purple hair, the prompt has purple hair. Don't deviate. Let's leave it the way it is. And you can see this is the first image that was output. And It's kind of cool. It's kind of generic. It kind of, has a kind of a stock photography feel to it. But there's definitely some usable assets here, right? So this is kind of the jumping off point. And then we won't get too much into this, but all of these controls and these sliders all give you a ton of optionality for affecting the output. So the sampling method, the CPG scale, which is the way to balance how much weight it should give to a prompt versus the input image, how much it should sample, the sampling types. All of these things play a role in how it interacts with the model you're using, with the image that you're inputting, with the prompt. So there's all of this kind of engineering and building and trial and error that is going to go into this. And the reason I'm able to get Stable Diffusion to output something that's fairly accurate to the direction I want to go to is because I've spent a lot of time refining all of this. Not necessarily with this model here, the Epic Photogasm model, because that's an open source one. But for the next part of the demo, I'm going to show you my personal models that I've been building over the last 2 years or so. So those are kind of all the elements of Stable Diffusion at play. And so then what we're going to do is basically, I'm going to be the art director and Stable Diffusion is going to be my team of artists, right? So I'm going to just let Stable Diffusion run and it's going to generate forever. You can hit this generate button and it will just continue generating. And as it's kind of generating new images for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the prompt. I'm going to weight different words. I'm going to add new words. I'm going to take away words. I'm going to play with the values. And as it's generating all of these new images, what I'm going to be doing is basically, we need a good term for this. There's a term, I'm sure you all are familiar with, photo bashing, but we need a term like AI bashing. That's fucking terrible. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. We need a good word for this. If anyone has any ideas there. So basically, I'm taking output, I'm painting on top of it, I'm bashing with that output. I'll take the upper eyelid from one, I'll paint over it, I'll refine it, I'll liquefy it in Photoshop. I'll then take where I'm at, bring that back into Stable Diffusion. And so it's a very, very back and forth process that I'm having between myself and the machine, really, really controlling that output. And you can kind of see this is overall the kind of progression I'm making, right? You can kind of see like where sometimes the ethnicity is weighted too far to one side. Sometimes, an eye shape is what we want from one image, a cheekbone is what we want from another, but then I'm going to take those elements and liquefy them. So it just gives me a ton of flexibility when I'm making the true executive decisions for the facial design that ultimately I wanted to get to. So yeah, to me, this has been unbelievably refreshing because as a character designer, I have spent a lot of my career Google searching for the right person. Because a character's face, but a production timeline doesn't have the patience for that. A producer doesn't have the patience for that. An art director doesn't have the patience for that. I'm being a bit facetious. It's not necessarily about patience, but you have to meet the demands of the project, right? So what this allows me to do is not only have a much higher degree of fidelity for the same amount of time, but to also spend a lot more time really truly making the decisions that are going to have the most amount of effect for the design. So for sure, I'm sure everyone can absolutely tell how this can be abused, right? I could give it the Rebelium output and spit out a high fidelity image and be done, definitely. And I'm not even going to say that there aren't jobs that you might be on that might warrant a worse workflow for something like that, right? You might be in a situation where you have to survive. And so again, this is really getting into the ethics of the situation, but I just want to continue to hammer home that when you can describe to your client, your employer, the difference between this face right here, it's a good face, some generic stock photo, and this, which is designed. This has feeling and soul. At least I think it does. I think someone with a trained eye, someone who's actually in entertainment, will be able to see and feel the difference there. So that's some facial design using Stable Diffusion. That's an intro to the open source software. Next, let's use the same process for the rest of the body, the costume, the rest of the character. So it's basically all of the same things, but we're just going to tweak a few of our settings here. So the number one being, now I'm using this is a model that I've been developing, training on my own portfolio over the course of, it's almost been 2 years that I started working on. I'm calling it my Daughter of Argus model. So this model is using the generic Stable Diffusion 1.5 base model that comes with Stable Diffusion, and then solely being trained on my own portfolio of artwork. And what I've done is I've taken artwork and then I've used that base Stable Diffusion model to take, say, one piece of artwork and then generate iterations of it. And it's the same process. I'll then take generations and then, paint and photo bash those generations or use 3D to then create other iterations that I know are going to satisfy a diverse data set. And by diverse data set, I mean I want a character of every ethnicity, every gender, every type of article of clothing, as many lighting scenarios as I possibly can. All my stuff is like studio lighting, so you do what you can. All of these types of things. And if I were to attempt to, say, make environment concept art with my Daughter of Argus model, it couldn't do it. It actually might be able to do something. It could give me some paint strokes. But my model is so specifically trained on my portfolio, and for those of you who've seen my portfolio, it's all characters, 99% of it. So it's very personal to my work, and you'll see this is an example prompt that I'm using. I never use another artist's name. I don't even have to use my own name because it's a model that's built on my work. I'm never using like a prompt that's another artist's style. I'm trying to use it as ethically as possible, and it's a living model. Every time I create new artwork, I train that artwork into it. This is also using another part of Stable Diffusion, which is the actual training of the data sets, or in this case, blending of data sets. So in one of these tabs, it's called the checkpoint merger. In the checkpoint merger, what you could do is take two models and weight them. You can take more than two models, actually, but in this case, you can take two models and weight them. And so what I did was train a model only on my artwork and then blend that with the base model that was trained on the base of the internet that comes with Stable Diffusion. And so this is living, this is organic. My hope and my dream is that one day soon, I can completely migrate my Daughter of Argus model to a point where I'm no longer using the base Stable Diffusion model. This again goes to kind of where I see the ethics going, but I would love to be able to say that I'm using a data set that is solely trained on my own work. So I hope to get there one day soon. Yeah, you can continue to train on models every day. I like always keep my GPU running essentially. So yeah, that's a bit about models with Stable Diffusion. You can also see the prompt is following the same structure as what we described previously, but I have a lot more words because there's more things to describe, right? I have a whole body, I have various segments of the clothing, the costume, the output. You can see I'm using some keywords that are a little more specific to my Daughter of Argus model. I particularly like words like realistic, photorealistic, hyper-realistic. I didn't put any of those terms in the face prompt because this face is already trained on photos. So you don't have to, say photorealism. But in the case of an art data set that's trained on, my portfolio, if you go look at my portfolio, there's a lot of photo bashing, there's a lot of 3D, there's a lot of realism in it. It likes a prompt that has keywords like hyper-realistic, photorealistic. You can see I even weighted these a little higher than 1 just to really put that emphasis on here. You're gonna see where that comes into play. The other thing too is that, oh man, okay, because I've trained on my portfolio, I trained on very old work of mine. And if you go look at my ArtStation and you scroll all the way to the bottom, ArtStation's only a fraction of like my full portfolio, but there's a lot of work that's like not very good or low quality or very sketchy. So I'm also kind of controlling the generalities of a prompt by saying highest quality, best quality, masterpiece, highly detailed costume concept art, right? Really making sure that it understands I don't want the artwork of Xander from 10 years ago, even though that has been really helpful to have in the data set because it diversifies it. I don't want that playing too much of a role in the final output. So yeah, we get more specifics, things like character profile, reference sheet, turnaround, logo, text, studio lighting, like gray background. These are all more things that kind of hone in the specifics to make sure that the prompt is working nicely with the input sketch. And then, of course, the subject itself. In this case, because I'm not focused on the face, right? We had a separate prompting session, a separate stable diffusion session for the face. I didn't do Asian, Caucasian. I just had one white woman wearing yellow insectoid armored bomber jacket armor. Armor's in there twice. I wanted that extra emphasis, I guess. Slim, fantasy, organic detail, front view, streetwear, although streetwear I wanted to emphasize a little less. Black knight armor, legging, boots. So a lot of specific nouns that are just kind of telling it, listen, these are all the things that you're seeing in the original sketch and all of the things that I'm going to be painting into this. You can see I'm starting to make some paint strokes, starting to kind of feel out the silhouette, things like that. And so this is the kind of prompt that I'm ending up with. And through the whole process of sketching, also remember that this prompt is changing a lot. There might be a moment of the designing where I'm really focused on painting the jacket. In fact, I think that's the first thing I do. Yeah, so you can really see I'm like just focusing on what does this jacket feel like? You know, I wanted to have that techwear vibe, but a utilitarian vibe. You know, that's like the yellows, the construction worker. I love the idea of the reference these kind of puffer jackets. They have that aura about them, you know. That's kind of more coming from the prompt. So I really want to make sure that I was painting that in. You could see with my kind of loose line work that I'm already kind of feeling those in. Just to talk to the guest here that asked about controlling the silhouette. This is really the stage that I'm doing that work, right? So I have the base of the 3D character from Reblium, but through all my paint strokes, you can see I'm kind of being pretty tight with the overall silhouette. There's a few areas that kind of break, you know, just because I'm a little more loose. You know, I'm kind of feeling out the bagginess of the jacket versus how tight I want it, because I want her to be in action, right? But for the most part, this is where I'm really kind of playing with the silhouette that was given to me. So I think that's really important at this stage. And so now you're going to see how I'm going through that back and forth. So we get output, we bring that output in, we paint that output into it. I want to get rid of all the kind of artifacts, inconsistencies, gooiness. There's a lot of like things that don't actually make physical sense or logical sense that Stable Diffusion doesn't understand, or that my model doesn't understand, that just require me to go in and like repaint them. You're going to see my paint layers in a second. And you can see I'm just, again, Stable Diffusion's running. I'll occasionally pop in, pull in some output from Stable Diffusion, pick some areas I like, bring that into the painting, paint over it, make some executive decisions, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Lots of layering, lots of really just, yeah, really nice painting and decision making to kind of get to this final look. You can see this is just a bunch of the types of iterations that I'm kind of getting through this process. You can see at some points in time, what I'm doing is I have more emphasis on the knight armor elements. And so when I put in more, you know, when I put the word armor in multiple times, or when I weight those with a higher weight, you can see it just starts popping on like a knight helmet. I'm thinking maybe I should open this up and zoom into some of these. We might do that more towards the end, but they're not very high fidelity. There's tons of artifacts. There's just gooey nonsense that you really need to be able to have a control over. You need to be able to paint. It's so important for this, because if I just popped on this knight helmet here, it would not even make sense. It would look decent from like a first glance. You would get, you know, this is a knight helmet. But if you really look at this, it's gooey nonsense, you know. But different areas, I'm more focused on different parts of the design and how that is going to influence how I'm prompting. And then, of course, what I'm always doing is I'm always saving out new JPEGs that I'm re-putting into Stable Diffusion to continue to guide my output. Here, I did as best I could. I should have done this more from the beginning, but I kind of broke apart my layers. So you can kind of see these are like raw Stable Diffusion pieces. And you can really see when I'm talking about kind of GUI nonsense, take a look at these kind of two arm pieces here. See all this just kind of artifacting, just like pointless brushstrokes. Like it just doesn't look good, right? Pockets, things like that. This is definitely the kind of thing that you're going to be consistently getting out of models. Whether that's high fidelity, something like Midjourney, or whether that's something that you're building on your own, like Stable Diffusion, you're just going to get a lot of nonsense, and that's just a lot of the artifacting that is probably not really truly going to ever go away, just because of how much information it really needs to understand about the actual things like physics and reflections and things that the human eye can intuitively know, but is very, very, very difficult to train into the parameters of a model. We can get more into the specifics of that maybe at the end. But just, be aware that, if you're on a job and you get output like this and you don't know how to paint over that, it's not going to go well. It's definitely not going to go well. Already I've heard plenty of horror stories about junior artists who have been using this as a crutch too much, and it's getting them into hot water. Maybe I shouldn't even say junior artists. I should say, prompt engineers, things like that. But yeah, you can see these are all my paint layers. So you can really see that, like, when I'm merging the two, it's just a layering of the two. A good example is these arm pieces and how the final arm piece looks, right? So like I'm changing the hue, I'm painting out all this dirtiness, but this kind of gave me like some hints of light, some nice silhouette to play with. It definitely aids my kind of back and forth, so I can stay solely with the creative decision making. So yeah, all of these kind of coming together. And then of course I have that face on top of it as well. So you can see I didn't have those paint layers here, but just enough to blend the neck into the body. So that is the concept art process where I'm kind of arriving to get to that first part of the character design. I've been kind of choosy with the work I'm taking on right now, because I'm definitely working in the digital fashion industry and really focused on development process and bringing this all together in my spare time. So I'm actually not completely positive how much of this is totally viable in production workflows. The few concept art contracts I have taken this year, I have been using workflows like this. My employers have loved it. They've loved the flexibility, the versatility, the ability to iterate, and of course the fidelity that can come out of something like this. But I also understand the controversies using a workflow like this. So yeah, I've chosen to be public about this because I think it's more important that artists are open with each other. We can continue to build community and to continue to think through the kinds of tools and the processes that are open to us. So that's the concept art workflow. So let's start taking that into a concept animation pipeline, because like we said at the kind of first part of the presentation, I most definitely think that this is going to be a way to really elevate your value proposition to projects. Is that every job I've ever been on, the more I can share about the design, about the character, the happier the employer is, right? The deeper the emotional impact of the project. And so, we kind of talked about not only designing just the front view of the costume, but designing things like facial expressions, designing, you're going to see a bit of design for like the weights of the fabrics and animations and a walk cycle, things like that. So all of this is very, very early days. Definitely still in development. The tools are definitely going to change. I'm going to show you a couple tools now. But I just want you all to be kind of on the lookout for what tools, hopefully open source tools. I hope you all follow my advice on that. Will be available to you, so you can kind of start honing your eye on what tools maybe to just try out on an afternoon and see what new ways it can elevate your work. So the first one we're going to use is a tool called Vigil AI. This is free to the public. Anyone can join their Discord and immediately input their their work and their animation to control the output. So what Vigil allows us to do is it allows us to give it a animation plate that it's going to take the movement from, and then give a still image that it's going to animate using the template. So if you recall, we used that Rebellion walk cycle that I showed at the beginning. We're going to apply that walk cycle to concept art. And a lot of this is for the purpose of demo. You can now kind of start to see why I started with Rebellium and started with a character that's pretty, close to where we're going with all of this. Because the more your walk cycle or any of your animation is close to the concept art, the better output you're going to get. So a few things to just kind of keep in mind is controlling all of the elements of that animation is a 3D walk cycle. But what's very cool is, let's say the part of your script that you're kind of basing your concept art off of is not just a walk cycle. Let's say there's some action. Let's say, she throws some punches or a kick, or, brings up her gauntlets in like defense or something like that. On your own phone or on your webcam, you can film yourself making these movements. And using yourself as animation to bring your own concept art alive. I think that's incredibly powerful, incredibly cool. And I haven't exactly had the opportunity to do this, but I really am looking forward to the contract where I can take specific story beats and animate the concept art according to those beats. It's just going to be so powerful. In that case, what I would definitely do is, I have this concept art. What I would do is try to get the silhouette of my body as close as possible to hers. So I'd probably put on kind of a puffy bomber jacket. Maybe I'd even stuff the sleeves to try to get this puff here. Maybe, I don't know, do something to kind of get the shape of the gauntlet. Man, if you wanted to be really over the top, you could paint yourself blue. All of these things are going to help guide the output a lot more, as we're going to see. So let's take those together. We're going to bring this into Vigil, and this is going to bring us right here. And again, this is a bit low quality, so yeah, there we go. Okay, so a lot to be desired, right? This is still very low quality. It's losing a ton of information that we originally had in the concept art. It lost the identity, it's losing detail, it's losing lighting reference. We have a long way to go. That being said, though, we do have a walk cycle. You just squint your eyes, you get a feeling of the character in action. Now, our action is kind of a generic walk cycle. My apologies, we're just demoing. But like I said, if you film yourself, you could really start getting into a position of, acting out your sequence, things that I think is much more common for people like animators or storyboard artists. I think this is going to be much more common for the role of concept artists and character designers, which I think is very cool. So we're kind of losing all of that. So let's see some other tools that are available to us so we can start to get higher fidelity and be much truer to our concept. So just to kind of give an example of alternate tools and alternate processes. This is the one tool that I'm going to showcase that actually is closed source. It's a company that I used their free demo, and I did ultimately pay for a couple tokens to do this demo off of, because I wanted to kind of show you the difference in types of control for the artificial intelligence. So in this case, it's called Runway AI. I'm sure you all have heard of this. Unbelievably powerful. It can do so many more things than just, things to do with concept art. I do highly recommend you look it out or check it out and just see kind of what offerings it has for your workflow. But in this case, what we're going to attempt to do is to do the same thing that we did with Vigil, is to give her kind of a preview of a walk cycle. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that we don't have any source video. So I don't have the walk cycle from Rebellion. I don't have a video of myself throwing punches, right? The only thing we have to control is a prompt. So we have to type in our animation instructions just using words. And this is very, very difficult to do. And it's like roulette. You're going to type something in and you're going to get output that is absolute nonsense. And so this definitely takes some back and forth. You're going to eat up tokens. You're going to burn money. And yeah, you're going to have a very hard time controlling the design. But just so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like and feels like, the kind of good news about it is the fidelity gets off the charts. This is super good fidelity. This gives us a lot of really cool things that we can work with and start to see. Immediately you see there's a ton of problems though, right? It loses a ton of logic for, the types of materials specifically in the legs. At certain frames, it kind of turns into a fabric. It loses the armor feeling to it. It definitely loses her identity the more the footage goes forward. And then if you pay close attention, there's tons of like terrible artifacting that we just didn't get in the Vigil output. So definitely some things to be desired, one to the other. But this is very cool to be able to share with a client who wants to be working on animations. I just recently had a client that's working on a video game, and I was basically doing some of this output using Vigil, just to kind of give them a feeling of like what that character could look alive. We had this character who was like, trying to think how much I can say. We had a character that was like an older king, but he still needed to be battle ready, in battle. And so it was really cool. Him and I were on a Zoom call together. He's in Italy, and I'm out here in the States. And we're both kind of acting and filming ourselves. And we're like, well, what if he's like more of a brute, but we want to bring his age in a little bit. And so it's like designing through animation. And yeah, hopefully soon I'll be able to share that work with you. But it was a very cool way to apply animations we were filming ourselves onto the concept arts, and then using that to develop the concept art further. So now not only are we going back and forth between Stable Diffusion and Photoshop, but we're going back and forth between Stable Diffusion, Photoshop, Vigil output, all the way back to concept, and using all of that to kind of balance. So it was a very refreshing workflow. It was very cool. So a lot of things I really like in this too, right? We get like a bit of bounce, gravity from the jacket on top. I particularly love that. So definitely some things to work with, jog the memory. And then just to kind of give you a sense, I want to show you a couple examples that are not very good output. There were definitely worse ones, but I didn't even want to download them and burn the credits. But here's kind of a worse example. You can see, again, it's roulette. I have no control over this. I can't weight any of my values. I can't input footage to control it. So there's so many things going wrong with this. It crops her feet. All my materials are wrong, basically. I don't get a lot of the same nice physics. Her identity dissolved. Not very good. It's okay. There's some interesting things to it. And then this was pretty bad output, right? So it added things. It added a ponytail. There's a lot more artifacting. It completely lost the material, the armor of the legs. It completely lost her identity. So you get a lot of this. And yeah, you can see it lost the lighting on her face even. It'll just randomly do things, right? So I got lucky that I got some output correct, but I would be mortified if I was in a studio setting and I'm like hitting generate, burning their credits, spending money, and just getting nothing that's like useful to the production at all. So ultimately, what I want to see is an open source piece of software like Stable Diffusion, where you can control the prompt, the input image, and the input video. Bring all that together with the same degree of controls that Stable Diffusion gives you, and then obviously have models that are good for certain things. So in this case, I'd want a model that's very good at character walk cycles, right? So it's going to continue to get more and more segmented. We're going to continue to combine more and more tools into specific parts of the pre-production pipeline in this case, and a lot of that's going to continue to blend into production. But yeah, this hopefully kind of just gives you a feel for what's possible at the moment and what to be on the lookout for so that you can continue to bring more value to the types of jobs and projects that you want to be a part of. So that is the first part of animation. Yeah, you can see that's the low quality GIF. So that was the full body, right? But like I said, so much of the character is going to rest in that face, and we put a ton of effort designing that face to be this very specific emotional character. Here, I think, is a really good example of just how much more emotion is in the concept versus the kind of generic 3D. Not to say that Reblium doesn't have an absolutely gorgeous library of 3D models that you're going to use that give you a great jumping off point, but you need to get in there and be the designer and bring actual heart and soul to the piece. So we want to bring that heart and soul now into conceptual animation. So let's focus on the face now. What we're going to do with this is we're going to use a really brilliant piece of software that, again, is completely open source. Everyone has access to right now. It's called Rope Pearl. And this is kind of a deep fake software on steroids, but much more usable, much more parameters that give us the ability to control. And this goes back to the Vigil model where we have input video and input still image, and those two things are working together with our final output. Unfortunately, we lose the ability to prompt now. So it's tough to have everything together in one. But so this is the Vigil layout, somewhat similar to Stable Diffusion, but what you can see is that it's taking our Reblium video that I showed at the beginning, her walk cycle. In Reblium, there's also like a facial cycle that you can do. No, I'm sorry. I'm actually incorrect about that. I'm thinking MetaHuman, which I'll show you in a second. Reblium does not have any facial cycle, but it has different lighting scenarios, which I think is also really interesting to be able to apply on a character because it gives you, semblance of different story beats, right? Your character is never going to be in the same lighting environment in the script. They're going to move through different environments. And so seeing different moods and lighting cast on a character is a very cool thing to be doing at the concept art phase. So you can see what it does is it takes that source Reblium footage and it's detecting the face. And then it's taking my concept art and then it's swapping that face. You can see here the face swapped on. I think I have a back and forth here. So definitely a jump in fidelity. It's much closer to the character. It's not perfect. There's definitely some things to be desired, but this, I think, has a lot more heart and soul than the Reblium output. I think it's gonna. Oh, let me show you the full quality video. It should be this one. Yeah, so generic 3D, higher fidelity, much closer to our character. Again, a lot to be desired, but all these things are being actively worked on. There's a whole Rope Pearl community, which I highly recommend you go and engage with. They want to keep all of their tools open source and available to the public, so it's very cool. Highly recommend. You see some close-ups. Yeah, the jumping quality is nice. You can see also with a variety of different lighting scenarios, it does a very good job at maintaining that identity that we spent so much time crafting. So very cool to be able to show this, share this. Rope Pearl. And then just to, again, give you another example, this is using a MetaHuman creator. Again, this is completely open to the public. I love what Epic Games is doing with Unreal Engine. It's free to use unless you're over a certain revenue. So anyone has access to MetaHuman Creator. And it's doing something very similar to Reblium, where it kind of gives you generic humans that you can have customization to a degree with. And all I'm doing here is now I have different expressions. She has a looping facial expression cycle. That's something Reblium doesn't have. So I just want to see that same character, but making expressions now. One thing you'll immediately notice is she's not blue anymore. That's another part of the reason I used Reblium, because I'm actively developing a blue character or a blue fashion model avatar for my digital fashion company. So I've been very focused on non-human skin tones, which is very difficult to do. So it's a really interesting challenge that I'm working with my developers on. So you can see, even though the input concept art, she has blue skin, the metahuman has normal skin. And so you can see the output from Rope Pearl now conforms to the input skin tone of metahuman. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, ways that you need to be able to control all of the different pieces that are going to come together for that AI output. It's very important. If you don't know anything about 3D and you don't know how to, make a nice texture map and turn that texture map into a convincing shade of human skin blue, then you're completely at the mercy for random AI output. And if you're using MetaHuman in this process, you're never going to be able to get her skin tone to be blue. But of course, if you do know the fundamentals of Unreal Engine, you can just pop into there, use Photoshop or Substance Painter to retexture a MetaHuman, put those new textures onto them, make her skin blue, and then go through that process and really control the output with the degree of fidelity that we need. So lots of cool things happening here. You can see there's tons of artifacting happening to the face. You notice it's not doing as well with the silhouette of the face. That's because my silhouette no longer matches the concept art. That is to say, the metahuman silhouette was not what we painted on top of. It's part of the reason I use that Reblium as a base sketch. So part of that's just for the sake of the demo, but part of that is just so that you all can be aware of the kind of pitfalls that you can find yourself into if you're not planning out your projects and how all these tools are going to harmonize together. Yeah, some of the more advanced facial expressions obviously start to fall apart. So there's definitely a ways to go. One thing I have not done personally because it's not in my skill set yet is going into output like this. And with a fine-tooth comb, frame by frame, I would actually do rotoscoping or real compositing. There's some unbelievable tools in DaVinci Resolve, in Cinema 4D, and in After Effects that would allow me to go on top of this and really start to control frame by frame the output. And so I think a lot of things like de-aging, makeup effects, facial visual effects, post-production, things like that are going to be using processes like this. And I know a lot of the major studios have proprietary technology that they're already using very much in a similar vein to this to achieve some of these results. So definitely some things to be on the lookout for. So very last part of the presentation, let's get it all combined. So again, making sure that everything is segmented so that you can really control every single piece to the pre-production pipeline. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to take our Viggle output and we're going to run that through Rope Pearl. So we're going from Photoshop to Stable Diffusion to Viggle to Rope Pearl, and each one is doing its kind of role and coming together in harmony. So we have the Viggle walk cycle, if you recall, it was very low fidelity, but now we trained the face into it, and this looks way better. This is so much closer to the character's identity. And so, yes, the body leaves a lot to be desired, but at least we kind of feel that identity, the elegant brutality that we captured in her face, is now starting to see. And it was very gratifying to start to see that from other angles. Her chin is tilted high. I think very useful to pre-visualize your concepts. And then we'll do the same thing with the Runway AI, just so you can kind of see. Let's get off this pixelated version just very quick. Runway plus rope. So now you can see the face is very, very accurate to that concept art all the way through the end of the video. So if you remember from just the raw runway output, the further the video got, the more her face morphed and changed. She had a completely new identity by the end of the video. But here, it's pretty damn good. It's getting very close to maintaining that identity all the way through. And I fully expect that what's going to happen is we're going to continue to add new models on top of each other as opposed to trying to brute force a single model to do everything. So one of the big sticking points for me right now is these models have a very hard time with non-human eyes, specifically very light eyes. So the blue character that I'm working on for my digital apparel company, she has these bright golden eyes. Very nipped with. I've worked with a lot of them at this point, has been able to achieve those eyes. And so I think what's going to happen is that, number one, you're going to use compositing software and do it by hand, and then run that hand animation through a refining model, similar to what we're doing with rope. So again, a back and forth process. Or alternatively, we're going to have models that get all the way down to the specifics of a single iris. And so you can really tightly control the input video, which is going to be the output from a previous model, with the concept art, and really have a fine degree of control over every single element of the face. And ultimately, what I really want to see, and maybe I'll give you a hint about some of the things we're developing, is where you actually have like rig controls on a 2D piece like this, so that I could tell her when to blink, when her eyes should light up, when her pupil should dilate, things like that. So it's all coming, and it's all going to be available at a pre-production stage. And I think that this is very, very, very valuable in a production setting. I hope so. We're going to find out. Sorry, I said that was the last thing, but this is the last thing. We're going to talk quickly about the 3D workflow, which was kind of the third pillar in all the production pipelines that we're talking about. So 3D is unbelievably useful to concept art, again, for the very reason to be able to control something, to give it different lighting scenarios, different camera settings. You get a 3D model that you can pass off to all the other departments that bring a project together. In my case, it's not uncommon for me to, have a concept almost fully in 3D and then send that 3D, knowing that all the other departments are going to be able to replicate that concept art very one-to-one with the concept art because I have it built in 3D. And I'll pass it off to the modeling team, the texturing team, the rendering team. In some cases, the costume designer, the production designer, the art director, the director, right? Now everyone gets this asset, and it's the same asset all the way through. So unbelievably useful to have 3D in a concept art pipeline. I don't think that's going anywhere. So I've tried a lot of tools that are 3D AI tools, and this is definitely the furthest behind, obviously, because it's some of the most complex, is to take a still image and generate a 3D model from it. The best tool I've found so far is Meshy AI. We have a free version, they have a paid version. You can see it didn't do a very good job. And I tried several outputs. You can see here's actually some other characters that I tried. It's a ways away. It's definitely a ways away. So what it does do, however, is this gives us a nice base to start working with. So in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this into my 3D suite of choice, which for me is ZBrush. But in the spirit of open source, I highly recommend everyone check out Blender, because that's 3D software that's available to everyone, completely open source again. And making the requisite modifications to the model so that I'm still in that concept art phase, right? There's still a lot of loose gooiness, but it's at least one-to-one with the character. So I wish I had a bit more time to kind of refine this for you guys, but I just ran out of time towards the end for the demo. But I got pretty far through the face. You can see I'm getting pretty close to achieving the kind of likeness that I want from the concept art. And then, some of the power of 3D is that I can start visualizing other angles, things like that. And then I can then also bring that into a render engine. In this case, I just use KeyShot. But again, I recommend Blender for the students or young artists here who want to, use something free and open source. And so then I can just start trying different lighting scenarios. Maybe there's different beats to the script that I've read that I want to work with the director with. This is much more of a traditional concept art pipeline. You can see Meshy AI generates a model, texture. I spend a few hours in ZBrush. I bring in a new head model. I do some basic sculpting. I project the concept art, the pixels of the concept art onto the 3D model. I bring that 3D model into KeyShot, and you can see I'm checking out different camera angles, different focal lengths, different lighting scenarios. And it's just another very powerful way that you can amplify your concept art pipeline by speeding it up at the beginning and generating that start to the 3D model. And these are just some raw renders from KeyShot, no post-production. You can see still a lot to be desired, obviously, but I just wanted to get her into like another environment other than that kind of studio lighting that we saw. I wish I had time to build something more, or I don't know, get some of the 3D assets from Hong's last instructor. But I kind of quickly put this together just to kind of break her out of that white studio environment, just to kind of get some moody pieces that maybe could satisfy the needs of a script and another type of storyboard. Obviously, also another way to make animations that we could then give to a face swapping tool. So this is just an animation from a key shot of a turntable. But if we run this through Rope Pearl, it just continues to refine that the design of the face. And now we're getting the design of the face from other angles. Full body, some cool lighting, super moody. She's, I don't know, in a lonely tar pit. So yeah, this is kind of how I'm watching the industry move. This is the direction I want to be heading. This is kind of how I'm viewing the expansion of the role of a character designer. So not only sketching and designing, but also getting into conceptual animation and the creation of 3D assets and bringing all of that together in a pre-production pipeline. So far, I'm only a year and a half in, but it's been very, very valuable to my clients, to my job, to my developers. And so I'm hoping that all of this can be useful to you all as well. And you all can be on the lookout for new open source softwares that you can use to elevate your portfolios and that you can use your portfolios to train into and to create models that are true to you as an artist. So with all of that being said, let's look towards the future. So design, animation, and 3D are areas to keep your eye on as they continue to develop, of course. In the future, I can see the role of a character designer being something more akin to creating short animatics of a character, almost like an audition tape. I would actually rewrite this sentence. I probably wrote this sentence a week ago. I would say you're almost making your film at this point, and your film is a microcosm of a much larger project. And I think that you're going to have the ability to just be so intimate with the writers, the directors. Like I described to you, the video game project where I was on a Zoom call with the producer / art director, and we're, doing animations together. Yeah, it's going to give you so much more of a depth of breadth for what it means to be a designer, because not only will you be designing visual elements like palettes, costumes, and face shapes, you'll also be designing their animations, their expression ranges, their mannerisms, their movement flows and visual effects, even their voice and their tonality, their personality, confidence, their inner being, their soul. All can be expressed visually. We all know this as artists, by artists with the right tools and skills. Your role as a character designer will require so much more of you to encompass parts of a director, an actor, a costume designer, an animator, the director of photography, the makeup artist, the VFX artist, the writer, all combined to make this future role of character designer. That's how I see it going. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all. I appreciate you all being here. I seriously hope that you got some value from this and that this was useful. All right, what you guys think? We made it through. Should we hop back over to the questions, and we can also open up the microphone as well? Thank you all. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Hong, I seriously appreciate the invitation. I regard this as a really important topic for artists and our industry. And I think it's incredibly important that we're all talking about this. And even for the artists that don't want to use this, maybe even for ethical reasons, I think it's super important to understand this technology so that you know what to avoid and how to elevate your skill set in a way that you don't even have to use it. You can separate yourself from the cookie cutter McDonald's nonsense that we're all seeing from AI coming out. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We have a ways to go. It's exciting. It's a crazy time, but that's what you want from the role of being an artist, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. I learned a lot from the sharing as well. Yeah, I think it's also safe to say that foundation for artists is still very important for all of us. It's not to say that AI comes in now, you don't need to learn to draw, you don't need to learn the fundamentals. All these are still really important. So yeah, I guess this set as a really good reminder for everyone here as well. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do not think that foundation is going anywhere. I actually am fully convinced that we're going to continue to see a new renaissance of valuation of real human-made art. A paradigm, I know I keep adding things, but just to give one other kind of way of thinking about this with you all, is that even in today's day and age of digital media, of AI art, there is still more valuation of human-made traditional art at this point in history than ever before, even though we're in the digital age. I see no reason why that's going to turn around and why any of this should deter true artists from learning an artistic skill set.
Yep, totally agree on that. Should we jump into the questions?
Most definitely, yeah. I know I
Right.
talked for a long time, guys, but I am more than happy to hang around and answer any questions best as I can.
Cool.
Um, yeah, we can. If anyone wants to turn on their microphone, go ahead. I'll just start reading the kind of next one here. Let's see, where did we leave off? I think we left off at number 5. This one was
Yeah.
pretty specific. If Hong, you don't know which, I believe this was one of your DBS students.
Let
Do you
me
know who this
check.
was specifically? Because I'd love to get a little bit more background on the second part of their question, if
Uh,
they're up for it. I'll answer it as best I can, but
okay, let me check. Who
does
is
anyone here
this?
recognize this question?
Let me see. Who is this person first? I think it's someone called Utin. Are you here, Utin?
Okay. Yeah, I'll read it, and if they want to hop on, I'd love to get some clarification on the second part of their question, because they ask, I want to ask, how would you approach a character design of a community that is in a fictional tribe slash culture based on a particular real life culture, but with limited resources or references to work with? I love the question. It's so specific.
Yeah.
Um, I worry I'm going to give too general of an answer, but I'd love to get some more specifics if they're here. So we'll do the first part first. So they say, first, I've been struggling with making interesting silhouettes for my character design. The first thing I noticed is that I need to consistently practice my figure drawings, but I would like to know if you have any tips regarding silhouettes in particular. Oh yeah, absolutely. Silhouettes is absolutely foundational. I don't want to call him out, but one of my absolute favorite mentors I ever had in my whole career is on the call with us, and just had the best advice on silhouettes and just hammered that home for me. And I always think about him and his work. Um, Joshua James Shaw. I hope you don't mind if I call you out, but yeah, I highly recommend going and checking out his work if you want to talk silhouettes and being able to showcase a whole character just for a few brushstrokes. But yeah, more specifically to the question, make sure at part of your sketching stage, you're being, I'm tearing up. You're being very precise with your shapes. You answered your own question here is that, um, you said, I need to be consistently practicing my figure drawing. Exactly. Get your anatomy and your proportions down, because if you have that buttoned up super tight, the silhouette of your character, the armor that you're going to hang off them or the ways that you're going to, shape that anatomy is really going to sing because you've already grounded that in a degree of realism. So yeah, again, it goes back to the foundations of things. If you're doing life drawing, squint your eyes and really just try to draw or paint the silhouette without any interior detail. Yeah, it's just practice, practice, practice. Do as much life drawing, especially if you're a character designer. Go to life drawing events. It's maybe the number one thing I recommend to artists to this day, to hone their eye. So yeah, extremely important. Okay, should we try to tackle the second one? Just want to make sure one last time they're not on here to give any clarification.
Yeah, I think the person is not in the call today.
Okay, no worries then. We'll keep it quick in general, just for everyone. So, essentially, they're asking to have a project with a degree of research behind it, meaning it's something that exists in real life, but limited resource. So to me, that kind of means maybe it's like a culture that existed a long time ago in history that you maybe can't Google search easily. And then bringing a degree of fiction to that. So honestly, that's like one of the most fun projects you can possibly do, right? So it requires like a higher degree of research, right? Where you might even need to go to like more specific source materials, like go to libraries, things like that, and start building from there. And then I might approach something like that, like trying to find at least more modern parallels and trying to integrate or at least just conceive of those kind of shapes and ideas and palettes into that, so that you can kind of start to predict how the rest of that culture might have looked. And then once you kind of have that solid foundation, it's kind of the same thing, right? So you take all of your anatomy and silhouette practice, and then you build on top of that once you have that kind of direction going. So yeah, a lot of the role of concept artist definitely is research. So there's some other ways that you can automate your pipeline, right? Type into Chat GPT, tell me everything you can about the aesthetics of this ancient culture, right? And then you don't have to do all this Google searching, though you probably should, because the accuracy might be off. Okay, what other courses do you recommend for someone just getting started in concept and AI at the same time? Yeah, obviously, the very first place I'd recommend is Digital Blacksmith School, because they have an incredible range of mentorships, professional artists who have done so much of the pipeline we've talked about from 2D to 3D. That's specifically to concept art. For AI, I don't exactly have a great answer for you. I think that the artists that are using it are, how do I say this? I want to say they're silent on the subject, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I completely understand why they would be, because there's ethics involved, there's witch hunts, there's a lot of fear in the water. So I'm very sympathetic to that, and I think that if you're in a position where that can be damaging to yourself or your reputation or your income or your family, maybe you don't want to be public with that. So I definitely understand, but I hope that in the future we will have more resources for artists, specifically with AI. Yeah, I'm hesitant to put this out here just due to the controversial nature of what we're talking about. But if anyone is interested in mentorship, you could send me a DM on Instagram and we can talk. I'm not sure about charging any money for this information just yet, again, just due to the ethics of the situation. But if I can be a resource to you at all, I'm happy to give that information away for free. So yeah, I hope to have more resources for someone who's kind of getting into both of these subjects together, because I mean that's going to be the concept artist of the future, right? Like, how soon until all of the top colleges and trade schools have AI courses? I mean, it's coming, of course it's coming. So yeah, I think it's important to do now and to preserve your artistic integrity before it gets out of hand. Okay, what advice can you give to aspiring artists or those who are just planning to study 2D or 3D? I think we touched on this all throughout the presentation, but the first is foundation. Don't touch AI, for the love of God. Don't touch AI. Focus on your drawing, your painting, your sculpting, because once you have those in a good spot, man, put 8 months in, 8 months of dedicated study to drawing. I promise you, the way you look and interact with AI is going to be night and day. Trust me, I know, because I, for some specific roles over the course of the last year, I've interviewed artists, and partly for my own curiosity, but partly because I just want to know how the industry and the people are using it. I have interviewed quote unquote AI artists for the role, and 0% of the time could I hire someone like that, because they have no ability to be able to control the pipeline, to iterate in the way that needs to be. They don't have a developed eye because their eye is being, dog walked by AI output. Yeah, and they're just, incentivizing big business by using something like Midjourney, because they don't even want to learn all the technicals of training their own models on something like Stable Diffusion. So, not to be too negative about it, but that's kind of what I've at least witnessed in this first wave of artificial intelligence. So yeah, if you're planning to study, please focus on the foundation, the fundamentals of 2D. For 3D, it's the same. Pick one 3D software package and get super good at it. I highly recommend, if you're looking at concept art, look at something like Blender, which is completely free, completely open source, and gives you the entire suite of tools that you could possibly need for any sort of role as a concept artist, and more, all the way into production and even some pre-production. So pick one piece of software, get super good at it, and those skills will then transfer into other software packages. I started with, I really started with Maya. There's I might do that differently now. That was pretty heavy. But once I had a handle on Maya, then I could take those skills, and it was so much easier to learn ZBrush. And now that I know ZBrush, it was way easier to get into something like Cinema 4D and Redshift and Keyshot, and all these other tools that I use in various parts of the pipeline. Right now I'm working on an Unreal Engine, and it's a beast. But having a lot of these concepts under my belt has most definitely helped. So, yeah, if you're planning to study foundations, pick one software package. Can you show how you animate right after you have designed the garments? Right after you design the garments. I'm so sorry, I don't exactly understand your question. I'm not quite sure if you're talking about the kind of workflows we talked today, or if you're talking about like a more robust 3D pipeline. For the second option, like if you're really trying to have control over the animation of a garment, what I would probably do is, do the concept art like we talked about, and maybe have some concept animation, and maybe try to get some output that is your garment doing something to give you a feel of it. But probably at this stage in the game, you're probably just going to want to watch some good reference video for how a garment moves, the weight of the fabric, the environment, and how it's affecting the garment, like wind. And then you want to learn a software package like Marvelous Designer or Clo 3D or Z Emotion. Those are three really excellent software packages that do cloth building and simulation, and they're all physics-based. So you can take real garment patterns and actually apply those in 3D and have it actually, interact with different gravity settings, different wind settings, different types of fabric, things like that. And then once you have the garment built in, say, Marvelous Designer, then you can bring that garment into like a simulation program, like Maya, for example, and then you can render it through there. That's a bit of a full production pipeline. We don't exactly have that available at the concept art stage, but hopefully I kind of gave you all a preview of what's to come, right? I want to be able to select a specific part of the jacket and say, they're on the moon, so we have moon gravity. I don't know what other things that are impacting the scene, right? It's made out of this type of fabric, and so all of those things go into that specific concept art leading the way, and you can really get a fine degree of control over that output. So that's what's coming, certainly. All right. Yeah, definitely some links for Digital Blacksmith. Check out their link tree. You can access that on their Instagram. Send an email to their contact at Digital Blacksmith with any questions about courses, mentorship, things like that. All very highly recommended. Check out their portfolio on Instagram. All their work's absolutely brilliant. They have, some of the very best artists in the world working for them. Quick shout out there. Let's see, CT. I'm curious on how do you exactly generate what you want, or whether you generate a general idea, then build/expand the design from that point. Do you struggle with generating through specific keywords and descriptions of the image brainstorm? Hopefully I kind of answered this through the demo, but I don't do this personally because usually always I have a pretty specific vision of what I want. Even if a director gives me a script that's not very fleshed out, and they say, give as much imagination as you can, run wild with it. Even if I have a lot of freedoms, I still get a pretty specific image in my head that I want to head towards. And it's not to say that image doesn't evolve as I start putting pen to paper. But very rarely will I generate something just for ideation. It's not to say that there's been times over the past year where I'll just do a prompt, no image input. I'll just do a prompt, and I'll just let Stable Diffusion run overnight. And in the morning, I have a few hundred images of just, randomness. And sometimes that's kind of cool. I've gotten some ideas from it. but I don't find that particularly artistically fulfilling. But it's not to say that might not also be very valuable in a production setting. You know, say you're on a small team that can't exactly afford a full team of artists. Um, you know, you can't afford an artist, but you still want to do what an artist can do. You're not taking a job from an artist. That job wouldn't have existed in the first place, right? But you could use an image generator to just start, you know, throwing out images onto the page and kind of do some brainstorming. I just don't think I would recommend that for an artist workflow. That's something I would probably recommend for a non-artist to use, like a developer who, like, I don't know, is trying to generate their logo, right? You know, that's actually not a bad example. My friend and developer in Bangladesh, that's actually what we did with one of his logos. I mean, I was helping him guide the process, so we had more of a specific vision. But yeah, things like that. I think the brainstorming blue sky, there could definitely be some use cases there, and I'm sure it's, you know, it's obviously being used that way. In some cases, it might even beat scrolling through Pinterest for hours, but that's controversial. Do you struggle with generating through specific keywords and descriptions of the image brainstorm? Yes, if I'm understanding your question right, yes. It's very tough to control that output. That's why I really recommend combining it with an artistic process. Oh man, what I should have done for you guys, I just thought of this. We should have tried to describe this character just through a prompt. No guiding image, right? Just the prompt. And just watch Stable Diffusion miss the mark every single time. But probably generate some really interesting ideas that could be some cool jumping off points. We totally should have done that, Hong. But yeah, you need a fine degree of control, and you need to balance that with an artistic output. So yeah, just generating through specific keywords and descriptions of the image, you might get lucky, but it's going to be tough, and ultimately it's gonna dog walk you in a direction that you don't want to go. Okay, how do you deal with messed up lighting from the AI? You don't. You don't. You're kind of screwed right now. Yeah, AI is a black box. No, I'm being facetious there. Obviously, in the demo, I kind of showed you're not controlling it through the AI. What you're doing is you're controlling it through the artistic choices you're making at the beginning. So obviously, we started in Reblium, which gave us this nice studio lighting that I'm then painting on top. And it kind of forces the AI to be in that position. I also typed in studio lighting into the prompt. The model that I've been building this past year, most of my characters are kind of a front view in studio lighting, right? If we go to my art station, like, there's a lot of the same thing, especially if we get past the newer work, right? It's kind of a lot of front views. You know, character design, characters in studio lighting environments. So it can do that, you know. If I try to take my character in like a dark moonlit field, it's going to struggle. It's definitely going to struggle. So the way to control the lighting is to control the model that you're building your image with, control the image and the painting that you're helping guide the model with, control your prompt, and then if you're doing any sort of animation, control the lighting in the 3D. So all of that control is not ultimately coming from the AI, it's coming from you. If you don't know the foundations and your art director wants to see your character, you know, in a natural environment, not in a light studio, you're not going to be able to, you know, change the lighting of your character. Like, do you know all the controls in Photoshop to be able to hue and color correct it, you know, paint in a rim light? Those are all skills that require a foundational skill set. And if you try to type all that into a prompt, but your image doesn't have all that in control, you're going to end up just generating and generating and generating. And listen, you might get there. You might get there quickly, actually. But if you don't, it's going to be rough. Like inconsistencies across materials and different parts of the costume. Yeah, this is all very developmental at this phase. And so the most you can do is to control that either on the front end of your output or on the back end after it goes through the black box of the AI. Yeah, I mean, all these tools are going to get better. You're going to have different degrees of control. Like I said, within some of the software, like Rope Pearl, I fully expect to see in the next few years controls that actually control the lighting itself, right? Like it should be able to do something like, if it's a face swapper specifically, it should give you like a lit sphere that you can move a light around, similar to what you would do in ZBrush to just move a light around a character. So yeah, I think all of that's going to come, but I think having a good degree of control over that as an artist, I think is definitely the way to go. Yeah, Joshua James Shaw, you're the man. Super appreciate all the advice you've given me. Yeah, you've always been super generous with your knowledge, and so I hope I'm doing you proud and paying it forward, man. Are there any of those stable diffusion modes you recommend for helmets specifically? Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully every single one of those degrees of control that I've kind of described gives you a piece to the puzzle for designing a helmet. Here's the interesting thing. I didn't really touch on this, but it's a good point to consider, is that all of these models are trained on images that already exist. And for something like a helmet, yes, there's a lot of concept art out there, but again, we're going to be focused on building our own models and using open source models and using photo-based models, right? Not models using other artists' work. And so if that's the case, you're not going to have as good a job of generating something novel like a helmet, right? Man, I have some examples of this too. I'm trying to think if I should go try to dig them out. What I'm thinking of is probably under NDA. Just because this is being recorded, I don't think I should share. But maybe if we do a private call, I can share some with you, Freddie. I did actually do some helmet work for that video game, and basically the output was not useful at all because we were trying to do something that is unbelievably unique. It's from a culture that doesn't exist, in effect. So Stable Diffusion was not much help there. So what I had to do was build like the initial block in 3D, again, just to have a very high degree of control over it. It's not to say you couldn't paint. I personally am a little bit more of a sculptor than I am a painter. So oftentimes I'm faster at understanding the forms of something like a helmet. So I did most of it in 3D. And then again, we'll run that 3D through the Stable Diffusion with the rest of the character just to kind of get all of that cemented in, maybe generate some interesting parts to it. But yeah, most of that work is really controlled through the artistic output. Because you asked about the Stable Diffusion mode specifically, once you've controlled for the artistic input, control for the prompt. So, you could put helmet and then weight helmet really heavily, like with a weight of, 1.6, right? Very high, much higher than 1.6. And then you just get as many specific keywords in there as possible, right? Is it a biker helmet? What material is it? What color is it? So it could be like a black matte cap 1920s biker helmet from some country XYZ, and then you throw in a bunch of other cultural words, and you just start kind of finding your path that way. Bring that into Photoshop, do some painting, bring that back in. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of prompt crafting that you can do in there to kind of get a helmet in the direction that you want it to. So yeah, it's a fun one for sure. I think that's all of our questions. I seriously appreciate it, guys. Thank you. I seriously hope that I answered a couple of those and that it was valuable to you all.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's all for all the questions for today. I guess before we end, I'm just gonna drop a feedback form into the comment section. So for those who have who are attending the talk, please feel free to give your thoughts and your review about our sharing, and so that because it can also help us improve our site as well. So thank you so much, Xander. Really appreciate your time and also the sharing and all the materials that you shared to the community, and also the Digital Blacksmith and everyone who attend here. I learned a lot myself. It also gives me a lot of arsenals to sort of talk to my team after this.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining as well.
Thank you very much, Hong, and thank you to the whole team at Digital Blacksmith. Yeah, I seriously appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, hopefully we can continue the conversation. And I very much hope that the future is looking bright for artists.
Yes, yes, I agree as well. Yeah, so I guess,
Thank you all.
yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. That's it for today. Thank you.
All right. Hopefully, talk with you all soon. You guys have a great rest of your day, your night, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, best of luck with everything. Reach out with any questions. I'm happy to answer anytime. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Xander. Have a great night ahead as well.
Thanks so much, Hong. I'm going to hit the bed now. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a message tomorrow, man. Thank you all.
Sure.
Have a good night.